if you can hear me.
No, I got you. That was me. It was me.
So we only have two counselors right now. Oh, here's three.
Yeah, but it's our favorite counselor, so we can keep going.
Okay, now we have four. So I think
That
we
was
can.
that was my best Josh Grinsman. Sorry.
It was good. It was
You
good. It made me smile.
you go
Okay.
for it, John Oliver.
David, how are you?
Good.
Okay, it is 7:01. This is Monday, November 13th, and a regularly scheduled meeting of the Finance Committee. At the start of the meeting, I'm joined by Counselor Oliver from Ward 1, Counselor Humphrey from Ward 5. Let's see. Myself from Ward 7, Counselor Kalis from Ward 8. And I think that's it right now. Our first item on the agenda is 354-23. For honor the mayor requesting to appropriate and expend $3,000 from handicap parking fines disability commission receipts reserved for appropriations account. And this is for the 2023 holiday targeted enforcement of the accessible parking violations, Operation Access, that we have been doing at least for the last number of years, as I remember it. Ms. Fairley, are you going to introduce this item for us tonight?
Yes.
Welcome.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Grossman. Yes, I'm the staffer for the Commission on Disability, and we did take a little break during COVID, but last year and now this year we're back on track. People are, unfortunately, parking a lot in accessible parking spaces without displaying a valid placard or plate. And it's even worse during the holiday time. So this is targeted enforcement. And usually we ask to transfer or appropriate a little more funds, but we have a balance in the account that the account where the police submit their overtime cost for this. It's almost exactly a month and maybe 5 days of overtime, but not every day. It's usually the weekends and a couple of evenings every week. And it's been very successful in the sense of more tickets issued. We're hoping it's also an education campaign in a way, but we're not so sure about that, but because it happens every year. But so we're asking to transfer only 3,000 because there's 3,400 in the account already. And last year, the cost for the overtime for pretty much the same amount of days was under 6,000. So we're fine with, however, and if they keep track of it, the police are wonderful. They do a spreadsheet, keep track of the tickets issued, who was the officer, what hours, what shift, and that's translated and given to the COD just to have a sense of whether it's still worth doing. And so far, it seems to be that way.
Thank you very much. And we've also been joined by Counselor Maliki from Ward 3. Do we have comments or questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, is there a motion on this item?
So moved.
I'm happy to move it. Yep.
Okay, motion to approve by Counselor Oliver. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we have unanimous approval of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to go on to item 356-23, acceptance of a $68,000 grant from the Mass DEP. And I thought I saw Ms. Trabert on here. Ms. Trabert, are you going to explain this one for us?
Yes, I'm happy to. Thank you, Chair Grossman and the rest of the Finance Committee. I pay attention closely to a program by Mass DEP, and we apply for this grant annually. It's called the Recycling Dividends Program, and the way that it works is DEP is trying to incentivize communities to go after best practice policies. And so when a community puts those types of policies and programs into place, they have a pretty elaborate schema of criteria. So when you meet those criteria, you get a certain number of points. The points have a dollar value assigned based on your community's population. So for the city of Newton, our point value is $4,000 per point, and we earned a total of 17 points, which then adds up to $68,000. I think that math is right. Maybe it was 16 points. Sorry. So things like having yard waste collection for more than 12 weeks a year, for example, earned us a point. Those are the types of parameters. Having the recycling center that collects more than 8 different material types is another thing that earned us a point. And so there's all these different categories. The great thing about this program is that the funding received is not tied to any specific program, and there's no end date on spending it. So communities can use it in a lot of flexible ways. There's a 3-page list of eligible expenses from Mass DEP for what this funding can be used for. It's generally put towards a lot of education, some things like signage down at the recycling center. We have earmarked some of the funding that we currently have on hand from previous years for a program at Newton North that is currently on hold, pending contract coming to fruition. But when that happens, some of the funding can be earmarked for that, to get some organics collection in the cafeteria off the ground. So there's a lot of different programs that we've used the funding for.
Thank you very much for the overview and explanation. And let me take it to the committee to see if anybody has any questions or any comments. Okay, no questions or comments. Obviously, it's pretty straightforward and a great, a great program. Do we have a motion on this item?
So moved. Move approval.
Approval moved by Counselor Humphrey. Any other discussion before we vote? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? We have unanimous approval of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are going on to 276-23, the CPC recommendation to appropriate $1,967,119 in CPA funding. And I see that we have been joined by Ms. Dada as well as by Ms. Kreitzer, and I'll turn it over to you to introduce it, please.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Grossman and members of the committee. My name is Eliza Dada. I'm presenting tonight on behalf of the Community Preservation Committee, where I serve as the mayor's appointee for housing, and I'm currently also serving as chair. I'm going to give a very brief overview of the CPC's recommendation to allocate FY24 CPA funds to the Newton Affordable Housing Trust. And I am joined this evening by Ann Houston and Peter Sargent representing the trust. And I think we have a very brief presentation that I'm hoping either Laura or Molly Hutchings, who's just joined us as staff to the CPC, can put up on the screen.
Thank you. And I'll just note while you're doing that, that we've been joined by Councilor Bowman from Ward 6, not a member of the committee, but one of our colleagues.
Yes, and a member of the trust.
I'll share that, Eliza.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Molly. There we go. Okay, so just if you could go to the next slide, please. Just a little bit of background, which members of the committee may be familiar with. So the Newton Affordable Housing Trust was established by the City Council at the end of 2021, so just a couple of years ago. And it was up and running quickly by the middle of 22. The group has developed a set of program guidelines over the past year, and they're now open for business, accepting applications. And Peter and Ann will be able to share some more detail on that. In terms of the CPC's role, we were part of the early discussions about setting up the trust, and we agreed in concept that we would allocate the CPC's annual target for housing funds, which is 35%, to the trust to allocate for future housing projects. And if you could just go to the next slide, please. So we made our first allocation to the trust in 2023. And then over this past summer, the trust came back and submitted an application for FY24 funds. And that's the current funding request that we are recommending tonight. And if you could just go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this slide just outlines kind of the request and how it breaks down. So the total request is $1.967 million. That represents 35% of the CPC's FY24 budget. This slide shows that we would take a portion of the funds from the housing fund and then the balance from the unrestricted fund account. And if we can go to the next slide, I thought it would be helpful just to put this request in context of the CPC's overall budget. So here's a snapshot of the CPC's finances at a glance. This is something that we update every month. And as you can see, with this funding recommendation to the trust, which is listed as an expense, that brings our total authorization so far in 24 to about half of our annual funding amount. So 51%. And we can come back to this slide if there are other questions about finances. But just in terms of what's ahead, we expect that these CPA funds will be used for housing projects that will be applying to the trust in the coming months. And Peter or Anne can speak in more detail about what's on the horizon. So that's all we have for presentation. Thank you for consideration. And we'll open things up for questions.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Let me first go to the committee for questions. Councillor Humphrey.
Well, I'm very supportive, as always, of allocating our CPA funds to the Affordable Housing Trust. So I'm certainly very happy to move approval on this. I think we've got a lot of good work happening at the trust and some specific projects coming up that I think are just really fantastic opportunities for us as a community to, follow through with the money on our values and make sure that all our Newton residents, have the safe and comfortable living situation and everything that they need to live as part of our community and, just like anybody else. So, like I said, I'm moving approval on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur with Councillor Humphrey, but I do wonder if there is some information on how or what are we expecting coming around the corner from NHA, and what are those accounts looking like in terms of balances and so on and so forth. I'm just curious. I think I heard that Peter or somebody else might be able to, or was on hand to perhaps spin us through that quickly.
Anne, would you like to take that?
Sure, and I'll ask Peter to chime in. I'm Ann Houston. I'm the mayor's appointee to the trust and chair. And we have we actually have two applications coming in this month from the Family Aid for the shelter on Washington Street, and from 2 Life to support some additional expenses with the Coleman House. In addition, we've heard, but unfortunately, we can only respond to applications that come to us, but we understand that there's some potential for other projects that might come in, including, I know the city is trying to think about some disposition for the Walker House property, the portion the city purchased, and that might result in a potential new project. So we're hopeful. There are lots of rumors, but right now we have 2 projects in front of us. Peter, do you have
Yeah,
anything?
no, I don't have anything to add. I'm Peter Sargent, also mayoral appointee, vice chair. I think the biggest challenge, now that we're up and running and going, and I think our biggest challenge, as we all know, is that, the CPA funding is primarily from the 1% surcharge on real estate transactions. Those have fallen through the floor across the state. So while the need is increasing and costs go up daily, for the foreseeable future, looking out, we see constraints on the amount of funding that we hope the CPC will continue to allocate to us. So our real challenge is to very carefully and scrupulously review these applications as they come in and see that we're trying to serve really all the segments of Newton, and we're really committed to trying to go as deeply into income brackets as we possibly can. So I think we're really excited that we're really getting going, and the challenge will be to keep the flow from getting overbearing.
And what sort of balances are you guys carrying forward in your account? Just again, rough.
Oh,
Right.
well,
So
right. Go ahead.
It's about $1.9 million currently, and so this will bring it just a little under 4 million. And so hopefully we could have some real provide some good support this year.
Fabulous. Great. Thank you. That's all I had, Madam Chair.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Bowman.
I'm sorry, did you call on me back, Councilor Grossman? Chair Grossman, thank you. Thank you, Chair Grossman. So I just wanted, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I just wanted to add my support as someone who gets to see firsthand the inner workings of the Affordable Housing Trust and its excitement in getting going. The amount of money that's going into the trust is currently very small. I think many of us are hopeful for sort of future changes at the state that might allow real estate transfer fees. But for now, if we're going to do much with this money, it really has to be in the way of supporting organizations that have access to much greater funding, right? So this is filling in some holes. It's not enough to produce a great deal of housing because it's not a lot of money right now. So I think the two upcoming projects both demonstrate, our organizations, the Family Aid and 2 Life are both communities that are well respected and are providing some really important projects. And for us to be able to support that, I think is really strong. So I'm glad to hear that some of our fellow councilors are excited about these projects as well. So thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Kreitzer or others, I just want to make sure as I'm looking at the funding request, this is a really similar amount of money to what we did last year. Is this essentially based on the different percentages that we allocate of our CPA funds towards affordable housing? I just want to, understand the kind of annual expectation, how you're thinking of the flow of dollars, and then the percentage of our CPA funds that will be allocated if this is approved, and if there's anything remaining for this category for the remainder of the fiscal year.
Yeah, so I can take that, Councilor Grossman. The request, the 1.9 million, is 35% of this year's funding allocation. So the CPC's FY24 allocation, and it's the same percentage that we allocated to the trust last year, and a very similar dollar amount as well. That leaves us, so the commitments that the CPC has made to date, or the authorizations we've made to date, is about half of our FY24 funds. But we also carried over about $4 million from last year. So we have a healthy budget currently for future applications that we're looking at.
Are there any major developments that we should expect to see in the near future that you're ready to sort of preview, or not yet?
On the CPC side, so So in the other funding categories, yeah, we have gotten a few applications so far this year that are in various phases of review. I think I took a quick look before the meeting. I think they total about $2.6 million in requests. Not all of them have moved past the pre-application phase, but we have some applications in the historic preservation category. And I think now I'm going to look to Laura because my memory is failing me a little bit, but we've previously funded also in the recreation category this year.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody on this team for your continued excellent work in this area and in all the really worthy projects that the CPC takes on. I'm certainly supportive of this as well. We had a motion from Councillor Humphrey. I don't see any other hands. Do we have any other comments or questions at this time? Okay, seeing Councillor Maliki.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I noticed on the backup material, I guess there's a pending application on the Warren House, preserving units at 50% AMI and another few units at 80% AMI. So that's one of the pending ones that has that been approved already?
Councillor Maliki, they have formally withdrawn that proposal in order to rework it. They had come in and asked for a tandem, fairly sizable request from CPC under historic and from the Trust for Housing. And we raised some questions that made them decide that they wanted to actually restructure their proposal. And so we're looking forward to working with them when they're ready to come back in.
Okay, so that's another one that you'd be expecting along with the two that you mentioned.
That's right. That's right. But you know, you never want to count your chickens before they're hatched.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, let's take a vote on Councillor Humphrey's motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? We have unanimous approval of that. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
We're going to go on to 357-23. Her Honor, the Mayor requesting authorization to transfer $446,104.67 to the Health and Human Services Department. Do we have Mr. Rosenfield? Councillor Humphrey, did you want to comment?
Oh, no, I'll wait.
Oh, okay. Mr. Rosenfield or Ms. Lemieux, are you going to talk to us about this?
Perry is going to. Commissioner Walsh was unable to be here tonight, but we are, I believe, fully able to answer any questions on this.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much, Mr. Rosenfield.
Thank you very much, Chair. So we are looking to request $446,104.67. That number is the FY23 opioid settlements that we've received from the state. They were unbudgeted revenues in FY23. As such, they've fallen and they're now a part of the June 30th, 2023 certified free cash number. So we are requesting to transfer those dollars from free cash into the Health and Human Services Department to allow them to begin planning uses for those funds for opioid mitigation. And if you review Commissioner Walsh's memo request, she's outlined specific uses that the funds can be used for, as well as certain restrictions that they cannot be used for as well. And I'll accept any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Lemieux, you wanted to add something?
Thank you. The only thing I will add is in your budget that you received this year, I believe we included a page that showed what we anticipate that we will receive over the next 16 or 17 years. We'll be receiving money through 2039. It took the state a little while to figure out how they wanted all of us communities to receive the money and what we were going to do with it. So we will have unbudgeted revenues that will hit our fiscal 24 budget. So I would anticipate that we will be back here either later this year or early in next fiscal year to ask for that money. But then what we're going to do is take the amount of money that's on the schedule that we are expecting that we will get. We'll put it in as a revenue. When we're putting the budget together, we'll have it as its own little cost center in Health and Human Services. As Mr. Rosenfield just said, there are certain restrictions on these funds. We cannot use this money to supplant anything that we have been doing in the past. But once we get through the money that we're receiving this year, we're going to handle it through the budget process.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Humphrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to comment that we had a very long, thorough discussion on this item in Programs and Services with Commissioner Walsh and Ms. Kennedy and some other folks. I also had wondered if we were going to sort of standardize and regularize it in the budgets going forward. I'm glad to hear that we will be, just because it's obviously a little bit confusing for people looking at like top line numbers on free cash and stuff if they don't realize that some of this is very encumbered and restricted in terms of how it can be used. So I'm glad to hear that we'll be doing that pretty soon going forward. As I said, we had a thorough discussion about kind of just the overall state of the crisis, what the Health and Human Services Department has been doing, what new type of stuff they anticipate they would be doing with this money, because again, as was just noted, it has to be new programs and services, not existing things, not revenue replacement. And you know, I think it was a very productive discussion, and I'm glad we had the opportunity there. So if anybody, you know, had any further questions or thoughts on the specifics, I'd encourage you to go back and watch that discussion from Programs and Services. Thank you. And I'll move approval here.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve by Councillor Humphrey. Do we have Councillor Oliver?
Great, thank you again, Madam Chair. So when I was just, I had asked a question earlier today that I was just hoping we could get back to for just a couple of minutes, and maybe sorry, my question was focused on free cash, right, for this fiscal year, right, the carryover funds from last year. And is it fair to say then, and this could either, I guess, go to Ms. Lemieux or perhaps even Councillor Humphrey, like, is this part of the, and I might butcher this number a little bit, but I recall we carried over something close to $5 million in free cash from, would have been what, FY22 through FY23 into our current fiscal year. And I'm wondering, is that part, like, the two items that are in front of us tonight, I think, could be candidates for some of those carryover funds, if I'm remembering the numbers even remotely correctly. And I'm just wondering if that's indeed the case for either or both.
So, Madam Chair, I'll be happy to answer that. Actually, none of the items that we have docketed, we have another free cash item that is not on your agenda tonight.
Yes.
I don't even know at this point where it has landed in the process. You might have even voted for it. Excuse me, the turf fields over at North. Have you actually voted on that one yet?
No.
I think so.
Okay, so we have then docketed in total 3 items for free cash. Actually, none of them are involved in the $5.5 million that we quote unquote carried forward. Of our 27 or almost $28 million worth of free cash that was declared, about 5.5 is money that we carried forward for items that we knew about but have not yet come to fruition. Then we always set aside $2.5 million, because nowadays we have just about $5 million in our budget each year. We set aside $2.5 million to, you know, keep at our fingertips, if you will, in case the weather is bad this winter or worse than normal. We've had 2 years out of the past 6, I think it is, where we have spent $7.5 million on snow removal. So we always keep money for that, you know, until we get to April. We have $1 million 1.5 that we use every year toward the next year's budget. We typically need close to $1 million to put into our rainy day fund to maintain our 5% balance. That we will not be doing this year, but there are wage reserve amounts that we have in that fund. So there are about $8 or $10 million worth, 10 or maybe even $11 million worth of contingencies that we will hold on to for a little bit of time. The remainder of the money, the mayor, Jonathan, and I have actually spent quite a bit of time, and this is what Councilor Oliver's question really was, is there a cohesive plan, and where do these items fit into it? They certainly fit into our plan. These, as I put in my response, are the ones that were more time sensitive. We will be coming forward with a few items that we will docket, and we've got to figure out just where we're already so close to the end of the term. Everything dies if we can't get it to you early enough for you to be able to get it back to your final meeting on the 18th of December. So whether or not we'll actually be docketing them in the next week or two, I'm not sure. Many items will probably have to wait until January, because obviously everything dies if we if it hasn't made its way through the entire process. I hope that helps. It does. I think I was kind of expecting / hoping for a different answer, but at least I understand where we're getting the funds from. But thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Do we have other comments or questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion to approve by Councilor Humphrey. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? So we have unanimous approval on that item. We are going to go on to 358-23 for under the mayor requesting authorization to transfer $130,000 to the clinical health temp staffing account. Just looking at our notes in the agenda, programs and services approved this as amended by replacing one long account number with $20,000 to come from a different account number, $40,000 to come from yet another account number, and the remaining $70,000 from an additional account number. And rather than reading them all out loud, I will just refer to them as printed on the agenda by programs and services. I think we need assuming the committee's interested in approving this, a motion to amend to match those account designations.
Move the amendment. It was just a typo. Basically, it forgot to say where the money was coming from for this item.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any discussion on the motion to amend? Okay, seeing none, just on the motion to amend, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so we have the motion. We have the item before us as amended. Ms. Lemieux and Mr. Rosenfield, are you going to speak to this as well?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I will. As you know, some of our departments have not been immune to the staffing shortages that have really happened all across the country, particularly here in the Northeast. One field that is certainly seeing shortages is the nursing field. And so we began the year with either 2 or 3 open nursing positions in our schools. As you know, we're the ones who staff all of the nurses throughout our elementary, middle, and high schools. And so we typically carry a fairly small amount in our temporary staffing line. And what we saw is that all of a sudden, we were really building up significant savings from positions being unfilled and having to call on more temporary staffing. And so we wanted to get this in front of you quickly as far as the school year was concerned, so that we would have money in the right account and that we wouldn't be overspending the account, prior to having the funding there. So it's very simple. It's that we're calling in temporary staffing, so agency nurses, to make sure that we have nurses in our school buildings.
Thank you very much. Councilor Humphrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, we did have a discussion with the commissioner about this. And I expressed, and we'll just reiterate with our finance team present, that obviously, while we need to do this to have temporary coverage, this is certainly not a long-term solution, and we urgently need to get the permanent positions filled. These are union positions. That's the same union that my mom is in as a nurse, and the kids really need the stability of the regular school nurse that they can go count on, that they know and have that relationship with, and so forth. And in the long run, obviously, it would be very expensive to keep doing the temporary staffing. So I hope we can get these positions filled permanently very soon. Thank you. And I'll move approval.
And we could not agree with you more, Councilor.
Okay, thank you. And we have a motion to approve by Councilor Humphrey. Do we have other comments or questions? Councilor Maliki?
Real quick, are the 3 accounts, did they represent 3 particular schools?
I apologize for the noise behind me. No, they are actually 3 different cost centers. So the Health and Human Services Administration account has some extra money. Environmental health, we've had some vacancies there. And then the 03 account is the actual clinical health, the nursing account. So it's just that they're from 3 different cost centers, if you will, within the Health and Human Services Department.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Let's take a vote on Councilor Humphrey's motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so we have unanimous approval on that. We're going to go on to 355-23 to appropriate $612,134.74 for the full and final settlement of Anastasia et al. Against the city of Newton. And this is for, well, actually the language below says exactly what I just said above, except it includes the Middlesex Superior Court civil action number on our agenda. So as our agenda notes, a motion for executive session may be entertained. And obviously we're in a public meeting, and want to announce that if a motion is made for this, the purpose for the executive session pursuant to the Massachusetts general laws would be to discuss a litigation matter, and that discussing it in open session would have a detrimental effect on our negotiating position, bargaining position, and especially litigating position. If we do approve to go into executive session, we will not reconvene in open session at the conclusion, as this is the last matter on our agenda. Mr. Cudmore, did I miss anything before I ask if there's a motion to go into executive session?
No, I think you got it.
Okay. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Councilor Kalis has moved that we go into executive session. Mr. Cudmore, can you please call the roll?
Councilor Grossman?
Aye.
Councilor Humphrey?
Aye.
Councilor Kalis?
Aye.
Councilor Maliki?
Aye.
And Councilor Oliver?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, so that's unanimous approval. As I said, we will adjourn from the executive session. We will not reconvene in open session. And councilors, you will all receive a separate link from Mr. Cudmore to join the executive session meeting. And that concludes our open session. See you all shortly in executive session. Thank you.